Hello, freedom fighter. Helen Bennett here. Today, I want to talk about why it's so hard to just stop restricting, binging, and purging. And the number one skill that you'll need to, I'm going to say master, but certainly get really good at in order to ensure that you do stop restricting, binging, and purging, and that you have the freedom that your heart desires. So it's a really big topic. I will do my best to keep it as succinct as possible. And it starts by going back in time when I was writing my book. I needed to illustrate a point about the power of repetition. And I pulled out my calculator for the first time ever, I actually did the calculation to work out how many times over the 2 decades that I'd struggled with bulimia, how many times did I probably restrict, but definitely binged and purged. And when I said purged, I only defined it for this calculation as the number of times that I'd thrown up my food over the period of those 20 years. I'd over-exercised till the cows come home, but I didn't want to have to figure that one out. I was just being lazy. And I didn't struggle with laxatives, so I didn't calculate that. So we're just talking about how many times in 20 years did I restrict, binge, and purge. I thought it would be a few thousand. I was expecting that. I mean, a year's got 365 days, right? So I knew it was going to be a few, but I wasn't expecting the number that came out. And brace yourself, sit down, because this is the number of times that I repeated the same behavior day after day after day. I took an average of 3 times a day because I'd had some successful periods, very short, maybe 7 days here, 1 day there. At most, I'd managed a month. But on average, it was at least 3 times a day. Why? Because for the majority of the time that I was struggling with bulimia, it was really hard to keep any food down, let alone, just one meal. So a bad day could run up to 8 to 10 times. A good day was when I only binged and purged 3 times, which is, I think that's probably an extreme version of bulimia. I'm hoping that you are watching are not struggling with that on that level. If you are, though, have hope, because if I could do it at that level of that number, then so can you. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. The number of repetitions were 3 times a day, 365 days a year, times 20 years. A reasonable approximation of the number of times that I had repeated the same behavior, 21,900 times. 21,000, I know, 900 times. If I just had $1 for every time I did that, I really have a lot more money in the bank. But 21,900 times I had repeated the same behavior. And I mean, that's just a behavior. Forget all the negative thinking. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm a failure, I'm useless, I'm never going to make it. Bah, 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 bah. All the thoughts would go on repeat as well. 20 years of struggle, 21,900 repetitions. So when somebody says to you, oh, why can't you just stop? You can smile and wave, because if they had repeated that behavior just 1,000 times, the chances are they would be finding it very hard to stop. Why? Because our brains are incredible. If those of you have watched the webinar, you'll know that the mechanism of behaviors that are hardwired is as follows. The brain recognizes a pattern of behavior. And its job is to, once it recognizes, oh, she's repeating that same thing again and again and again. Okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to hardwire it into the subconscious so that she doesn't have to think about it anymore. She can just do it on autopilot. And that frees the rest of the conscious mind up to focus on all the other problems that are being thrown at her in the environment, right? That's what makes humans so incredible, is I think our capacity to wire down, hardwire behavior, repeated behavior, freeing us up to have all this conscious brain to problem solve in other areas. I think it's the fundamental thing that makes us, aside from language and a few other awesome things, getting sidetracked, that make us so awesomely human. Okay, so the good news is we do that, and it's super important because every single behavior we do, from walking to speaking a language to tying your shoelaces, even just to the way you put on your underwear every morning, you do it the same way every day. You just try tomorrow putting on your underwear with the other leg first. It's unreal how hard it is to do that, and how many times you've got to repeat it before it becomes the new norm. So my point is that any behavior repeated often enough, they say 21 days, it's probably more like 90. and I was, doing my behaviors 3 times a day, if not more, becomes hardwired. It basically means we do it on autopilot. We don't have to think about it. And similarly, if you learn how to drive, and you're driving home every day, and then you move house, you'll find yourself accidentally driving home to the old house when you're not consciously making sure you're going in the right direction. So it's a brilliant mechanism. It works for every single behavior, good or bad. The brain doesn't distinguish. However, if there's a high level of reward of those behaviors, the brain will enjoy them and want more of it and wire it down even faster. So the reward level is important, but that's not where I'm going today. That's why it's hard to stop, because you've practiced it so often. You've practiced it. They say practice makes permanent. You've practiced it so often that it's now hardwired in. The good news, though, is that it's not permanent, even if it feels like it is. The brain is something called neuroplastic. This is a concept that's been around for a while, but now it's going through the world like wildfire. Everybody's talking about the neuroplasticity of the brain. Essentially, all that means is we have the capacity to change the hardwired program. And the way to change a hardwired program, well, there's two. The one is like literally if you were to take a laser and get the old cells and they'd be gone. Like whatever you'd learned would be gone if you've destroyed the cells where the program's made its home, I guess. The second way is through repeating new behaviors. As you repeat an alternative behavior, the minute you stop repeating the behavior that you've done thousands and thousands of times, your brain recognizes, she's not using that neural pathway anymore. And it literally, apparently, and this is phenomenal to me, culls all the cells, that whole neural pathway involved in, let's say, you never had to tie a shoelace again. That neural pathway of tying shoelaces would begin to die off. If the brain sees she's not using it, it's going to get rid of it. It's super efficient. So once they started discovering that, it meant that you could literally teach an old dog to do new tricks, that you're never too old to learn something new. Your brain can rewire. And I could go into more about this because it's so crazy exciting how incredible our brains are. But all you need to know for the purposes of this is repetition of the behavior hardwires it in. Anything that's hardwired is extremely difficult to unwire because the amount of repetitions have made it subconscious. The way to rewire it is to bring it back up into the conscious mind and repeat new behaviors. So the question is, what are the new behaviors that need to be repeated? Well, as you may or may not know, I've narrowed it down to 12 skills that are fundamental to bulimia recovery. Things like checking in with your tummy, being able to hear if you're hungry again, learning to know how much to eat, learning to hear when you're full and stop, learning to be able to deal with the discomfort of bloating or the discomfort of hunger. These are the kind of skills that can be taught and that can be practiced intentionally and rewired in again and again and again until they become the new hardwired program, the new automatic, and that old bulimia program will begin to disappear. That's when recovery becomes really easy. And eventually, after enough time and enough repetition, the old behavior, the old program of bulimia can actually disappear completely. That's the goal, right? So the sooner you start wiring in those new behaviors, the more you practice it, the more you practice it with a lot of enjoyment, the faster that new program takes place. The skills, they say repetition is the mother of skill. So we talk about this 12 skills that need to be repeated again and again and again in order to come to that place of freedom. So when I started this video, I said we were going to talk about the one skill that I believe is the skill that you cannot get away with and that you'll pretty much have to master by the time you're finished. And that is the skill of resilience. Resilience, the ability to get punched in the guts and to get back up and fight again for another day. It's extremely difficult to feel resilient or to want to try again when you've tried hundreds of times and failed. When you're in recovery, the chances of you just being able to stop tomorrow and never do any of those behaviors, restricting, binging, or purging again, ever, are slim to nothing if you've repeated them thousands of times. But that's not easy to accept. We want to think we're in control of all of it, and we want to think we'll never do it again. And we look at alcoholics and heroin addicts, and they, not a huge success rate, but there are people who literally don't do it again. We think, well, surely we should be able to. The difference is we're dealing with food. We have to be interacting with food all the time. So we're in a situation where we have a behavior that we've repeated multiple times that's hardwired in, and we're also in constant contact and constant interaction with. We're being forced to practice even when we don't necessarily have the energy or the discipline or the drive or the willpower to make new decisions, to take different action. So resilience is going to be incredibly important, because the odds are stacked against you of being able to do this right forever and ever again, forever and ever and ever, and never make a mistake again. The odds are stacked against you. In fact, I'd say the chances of you never making a mistake again are negligible. So I'd far rather work with clients and say that you are likely to have a relapse, you're likely to make mistakes, you're likely to slip up from time to time. Your job and my job is to ensure that you keep making progress, that you do not get up, that you dust yourself off as quickly as possible, learn what needs to be learned, and move forward. So this isn't let's just forget it happened. It's okay, let's just spend enough time there to figure out, does there something need to change? What can be improved? Or do I just need to try this again until I break through? Your job is to do that, but not linger in that space. You're allowed a bit of disappointment. Of course you are. You're trying something, it didn't work. You're allowed disappointment. But guilt, shame, hopelessness, despair, that's the skill that you're going to really have to undo, is to take the desire to go to, I'm never going to make it, this is not going to happen for me, I'm so angry, I'm frustrated, what's wrong with me, all that negative thinking, the shame and the guilt. You are going to become masterful at letting go of that, learning what you need to learn, and get back on that horse as fast as possible. And you will get better at it. Does it help to have a coach cheering you on? Oh, yes, because when you're the one struggling, you're the one who's not been able to do this thing for the 100th time that you've tried again and again and again, it's super helpful to have somebody to say, you can do this, I know you can, get back on the horse, get back on now. So I think that's really all that needs to be said there, is that, in summary, the reason it's hard to stop is because you've practiced the skill of bulimia multiple, if not thousands of times. You're going to have to rewire and practice lots of new skills that are really completely opposite to what you've been doing. And you're going to need to keep getting back up again and again and again every time you make a mistake. And the reason a lot of people don't get to long-term recovery, the reason that the odds are stacked against you, is not because some people are weak. It's simply this. It's because they come to a point where they feel hopeless, where they don't feel like they're making progress, and they give up. Or they try a different thing that doesn't work. This method works. Wiring in the right skills repeatedly works. Not because I'm an amazing coach, but because the brain will wire in whatever you repeat. So repeat the right things. Do the right things. Choose the right skills and practice the new behaviors relentlessly, no matter how many times you fail, no matter how many times you fall, no matter how many times you get punched in the guts. You dust yourself off, you learn what you need to learn, and you get back in the ring and you do it again. So if that feels a bit overwhelming, or you'd like some help, you need a cheerleader, you need somebody to help you know what skills need progress, where you've made progress, where you still need to do the work, somebody who can help you make those adjustments to see, what am I still doing wrong here? I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. Give me a call. I can help you out. And we're going to be doing lots of group coaching, and there's going to be DIY courses as well. So wherever you are in your recovery journey, whether you just need a little bit of help or whether you want the whole shebang, there's place for everybody. If this is lighting you on fire with enthusiasm and you're thinking, hell yes, I wanted to start yesterday, give us a call. There's a link below this video. We'll book in a breakthrough session and we'll see where to go from there. Until then, I hope to see you soon, but otherwise, just wishing you all the joy and happiness on this journey. Remember, we don't have to wait to be recovered and free before we can be happy. I urge you and encourage you to let go of the shame and guilt you feel about what you're doing acknowledge that you've repeated something many times and it's probably going to happen again. But that doesn't make you a bad person. Now you have the right skills, the right method, and you're going to practice that relentlessly until it becomes who you are. So, ladies and germs, have a wonderful day. Find a way to be happy on the way, and I will chat to you again soon.